This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome everybody to this week's episode of Doc and Jock. I am the Doc, John Macaroon, looking forward to broadcasting with my guy Adam, the Jock Strozinski. So much to get into regarding the Pistons, the Lions entering their second week of OTAs. So much going down. The NFL could be changing the way the Doc vacations. We got to talk all about it, cuz how are you reacting now a week after delivering a baby? You and your family now are 3 along with the pets and the missus. How's everything going? It's always different when you get into the groove of having a little one there, and it's always different, man, with sleep schedules, trying to manage everything, and this new normal. How you living?
It's coming around, right? You're right. It is different. The thing is, we are kind of falling into a bit of a routine, a bit of a schedule, which is good. Look, I'm gonna be honest with you. She's actually a great baby. Except when she's got to poop. When she's got to poop, she gets all sorts of fussy and she has these mental breakdowns and just screams and cries. Otherwise, she's fantastic. She eats a ton, but she's great otherwise, other than the pooping, man. It's a good time. She has pooped on me. She has peed on me a couple of times. I tend to be a little bit quick to getting to the diaper. The moment I'm like, oh, crap, there's poop in there. Oh, crap, there's pee in there. I'm racing to get her changed, and I need to learn to just kind of hang out a little bit. Don't rush it. Just let her finish and then go. There's been multiple times where I'm in the process of pulling the diaper away, and there's still more coming out, whether it's from the front or the back. But otherwise, man, it's not bad. She's like I said, she's a cool kid. She's got her. We're getting into that routine. She's kind of training us, which is interesting. But her mom's great and does most of the heavy lifting. I know we talked about that a little bit last week with Andrea and the girls doing a lot of the heavy lifting with you guys. But it seems like the moms do a ton of the heavy lifting, especially early on. And you just kind of have to be there to support them and then kind of pick up the slack as needed. So it's been good, man. It's been good. I can't complain. I usually get that first wake-up call. So that first, after we put her down, I usually get woken up anywhere between 1 and 3 o'clock in the morning, and I do that feed. And then Melissa usually takes that early morning feeding, whether it be 6, 7, 8, or even 9 o'clock. We've had her going until 9 o'clock in the morning where she's kind of slept for a couple of hours. So it's working out, and we're just kind of figuring it out as we go along, similar to these Detroit Pistons that we're going to be talking about here. They're going to be figuring out as they go along.
Yeah, it's always interesting when we look at the teams here in Detroit and the manner in which they rebuild and the way in which they're perceived. And look, the Pistons is just really tough because it's a franchise that has taken a big dip. They're kind of viewed across the league as a laughingstock, and you and I are not used to that. You're not used to Detroit. You know, back in the day with the Pistons, they were on the come up. They had these great battles with the Lakers. They had obviously one of their great guys in the Bad Boys and Joe Dumars ended up running the team. He got a championship back in 2004. Then got perennially to the NBA Conference Finals. They couldn't get over the hump based on a couple bad draft moves that just didn't work out to allow them to win their second championship. So I will say this: the Pistons have always been a team that you can root for. But then all of a sudden, once Joe Dumars was fired, and it ended up being a situation in which he had some free agent dollars and totally mismanaged it with Ben Gordon and Charlie V, it's just been a clusterfuck, and it's been embarrassing throughout the course of this podcast. They haven't won a playoff game. They've been in a playoff series, but they got destroyed and dominated. So it's just really unfortunate that the Pistons have tried so many different things. Then they get a new owner in Tom Gores, and it just has gone south, completely south, from moving away from the Palace to going downtown, being a tenant in someone else's barn. And you look at it and you say, what the hell is going on in regards to the Detroit Pistons? And that now they're coming off of a season worst record, 14 wins. And the reports are that it's Trajan Langdon going to come in and try to clean this all up. And it's great. It's fine. It's somebody that you say, okay, that you got to give him a chance. It's not the best hire out there. It's not prime A candidate one, but unfortunately, you can't wait for Connolly from the Timberwolves forever. And he was trying to hold you up for probably reportedly $15 to $16 million a year. So he wanted to get the bag. And to me, Trajan Langdon is somebody that, okay, has a history of being a general manager that's put together a roster that gets to the postseason. But to me, it's just kind of a situation in which you're counting on him to take a step forward in his own career when he hasn't put together a team that's won a championship. So he's got a lot more question marks than answers at this point, but we got to give him a chance. And I think, cuz, simply put to me, if he takes more than, let's say, 2 hours to fire Troy Weaver, then it's a failed hire because it takes literally no insights at all to recognize who the hell put this together where the pieces don't fit. You don't have good players that can win basketball games. You don't have any shooters. You took on too many reclamation projects. So if Trajan Langdon comes in and he needs a year, then you just realize he's just going to be one of those dudes that's just going to try and take advantage of the situation with his relationship with Tellem, the vice chairman. And you just say, look, right now, he's got all eyes on him to try and solve this problem. And I just think that there's just too much water coming at him, and he's swimming so far upstream that I just feel like he's going to get swept away. I don't have confidence sitting here today that the Pistons have any hope of trying to fix this. So good luck, Trajan Langdon. Right now, all eyes are on you, and I just think that the task at hand is too difficult when you recognize how far behind the Pistons are compared to the rest of the NBA.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. It's one of those things where there's too many hands in the kitchen. There's too many hands in the cookie jar. Everybody has a bit of a say, and everybody's kind of pulling, and nobody's really putting things together as a unit. There's too many different ideas. There's too many different visions. And look, if this was any other organization anywhere else, I could see him being successful. Him coming to Detroit with Tom Gores as the owner, and you already talked about Arn Tellem still being a part of this front office. There's just too much. There's too many different people involved, and when that happens, things do not work out. Things go horribly awry. And look, he did a really nice job in New Orleans. He did a really nice job drafting guys, acquiring different guys. Really nice job trading for some superstars down there. He's done a good job building that team as a general manager. So him coming in as the leader of the basketball operations, he's got a lot to kind of deal with initially. Got to figure out what you're doing with your GM, or even if you're going to take on the role of GM after you fire Troy Weaver. Then you've got to figure out what you're doing with Monty Williams. And then you've got to figure out what you're going to do if you fire him, what you're going to do for a head coach. So there's a lot. And that doesn't even go into what you have to contend with this front office. You know, you've already talked, like I said, we've already mentioned Arn Tellem. You've mentioned Tom Gores, who seems to be a bit of a meddling owner. You remember when Stan Van Gundy was here, there were a lot of different things that Tom Gores wanted that he forced Stan Van Gundy to do. And look, you even go back to when Stan Van Gundy was here. They had this approach where there were a lot of voices in the room, and collectively they were making decisions. That never works. That didn't work out. Basketball is one of those things where everybody's got to kind of be of the same mindset, and it's got to start at the top. And if he's going to come in and he's going to be like, look, Troy, or he's going to be like, look, Tom, he's going to be like, look, Arn, he's going to tell these guys, like, I need you to let me do my job. You have to stay out of my way. I'm going to hire and fire who I feel is going to be best for this team, and he has to have full autonomy. If he's got full autonomy, I could see this working out, and I could see this team turning it around. And I don't know if they'll have enough to get into the playoffs and win a playoff game, but I could see them being more competitive than what they are right now. Right now, they, like you said, they're a laughingstock of the NBA. And I don't know if this hire does anything to kind of quell any of that, to kind of dampen any of that noise. I don't really think it does. And again, it's not even so much who it is. It's the organization as a whole that is the bigger issue. The organization as a whole has a problem with getting in its own way. Ever since Tom Gores has bought this organization, he has seemed to have made a mess of it and has seemed to have made a mockery of it, which is really unfortunate because the Detroit Pistons are one of those organizations in the NBA that are royalty. They are one of those organizations in the NBA that are a top 10, top 12 organization in the league, and he has somehow sank them all the way down to 30. It's really unfortunate where the Detroit Pistons are and how far they have fallen. I don't know if Trajan Langdon can save it. I don't know if he's the guy. I'm willing to give it a shot, but I need him to come in and I need him to be pretty steadfast. And he needs to tell everybody in that front office, everybody in the hierarchy of that organization to kind of mind your P's, mind your Q's. Let me do what I have to do. What was your initial reaction when this news broke? Because I know this broke after we had recorded last week, and me and you were kind of going back and forth and kind of talking about it. But what was your initial reaction? Because I know when the news broke, I just kind of rolled my eyes. I was like, all right, we'll see what the hell happens here. Look, I feel like for me, a lot will be told on what he's going to do with the general manager position, and a lot for me will be told with what he does with the head coaching position. I don't believe Troy Weaver deserves another go round. I don't believe he deserves another chance to try to piece it together and figure it out. Monty Williams, I could be sold on because I seen what he did in Phoenix. He seems incredibly checked out here in Detroit. But like I said, for me, when the announcement came through, I rolled my eyes and I was like, all right, you've got 2 tests immediately. And you, for me, will pass or fail what you do with these 2 guys, whether you're keeping Troy Weaver or not. If you keep him, it's an automatic fail. If you keep Monty Williams, I need to know why. I need to know what you guys talked about, and I need to know what you see in him. But it's going to be interesting because initially, once you take that office, you've got to make 2 immediate decisions.
Yeah, it's a situation which I'm very skeptical. It's the best word. I'm highly skeptical in regards to the fact that, hey, the Pistons have not figured out the way in which to properly operate, which is identify good talent, bring in good head coaches, bring in good general managers, identify talent in the draft, don't waste time in reclamation projects, give out good contracts. And unfortunately, you fell into Cade Cunningham, but it doesn't seem like he's going to have the Wembanyama effect where he's a good player, but is he going to be franchise altering? It doesn't look that way. It looks like clearly he's going to need to fit a puzzle. And many people believe that maybe it's the Ivy puzzle that's the right way to go in regards to, hey, Cade Cunningham's game is maybe not conducive to the style that you want, that Trajan Langdon might want to play, up and down, fast-paced style, and get some shooters. Whereas, Cade Cunningham's more of a traditional point guard, half-court kind of offense, whereas maybe Ivy might be the run-and-gun athletic situation in which you build around him. So there's still some question marks that need to be answered. So I'm highly skeptical because of the fact that, look, the Pacers have already jumped you. You have, the Cleveland now that's looking solid and could be a perennial playoff team. So if you haven't been able to get into the play-in game, that's the sick part. You haven't in the league where they're basically enticing all these teams to get into the postseason. You can't even sniff that. Man, that's just, and you got Monty Williams, who I just think that you got to build a super team around him. He just is kind of like, okay, thank you for paying me, and I'll just come in and do it and tell the media one thing and do another. And he needed consultation to put together a lineup that was a little bit more conducive to fit together. Playing Ivy and you needed a long time to put pieces together to figure out that Ivy needed to start and play a different role. And then you were deciding. It was like, what? You're supposed to be an advanced basketball mind. You're paid as one of the top guys in the entire National Basketball Association. So I'm disappointed. It's hard to pay attention to the Pistons. It's hard not to laugh at them. It's hard to just not go, man, this is defunct. This is clearly what defunct sports organizations do, is they just keep cycling through people that they know instead of the top minds. And so we'll see if Langdon comes in, and if, like I said, first move he's got to make 24 hours. Okay, we've parted ways with Troy Weaver. And I don't think, look, even though the owner said, hey, you have carte blanche to blow out Monty Williams, I don't think, personally that you want to come in and right away make the owner scratch a $60 million check. You just get Monty Williams better players, and he'll earn his contract. Because if I was there, I would say, yeah, you got carte blanche to do whatever you want. Then if Trajan Langdon comes in and is like, look, we're going to need to blow out this head coach, I'm going to be like, you really want me? You really, really want me to cut a $60 million check? Really, really? I would look at you a little side-eyed. But in the end, you got to get better players. You got to get shooters. You got to build this team in a manner where you're a little bit shrewd. Maybe trade the number 5 pick this year for some talent and make some shrewd moves that, hey, some guys that come in that can actually maybe are unheralded, but come in and actually turn things around at LCA, because there's a lot of fans. Look, Cameron hit me up. He was like, I want to talk Pistons. I'm like, why? Why do you want to keep talking about the Pistons? And he's like, I just want to go to, he gets down there and there's an energy. There is a underlying fan base in Detroit that loves all sports, and you've basically kept them dormant, but there's still a lot of people that listen to a podcast talking about the Pistons and just complaining about them and making jokes about them. So it's a wild thing. And just imagine, cause what LCA would look like if you got it to turn around. So I'm hoping.
Oh, it would be unreal. It would be absolutely unreal if they could somehow figure it out.
Get good people in charge. Get people that can build a culture of winning and accountability and doing exactly what you want to do. And hopefully that involves bringing in talent, figuring out ways, whether it be Brandon Ingram with the relationship that he has with Trajan Langdon, or whether it just be getting creative with the cap situation. There is cap money to give, so let's see who's going to take it, and let's see how this new puzzle is fixed, because it wouldn't take 5 years to get into the postseason. So I just think that I'm skeptical, but hey, if he's a basketball mind that people respect and trust, let's see, because I think you and I are probably in the same boat. To me, when you see everything that happened, it just would have been, all right, I'm the owner, and I'm blowing out everybody, front office, scouts, personnel, and we're starting this thing brand new, and we're going to get people that the league recommends that are talented, that can get this thing back on track, because it is derailed, it's defunct, and nobody's coming to fix it that people have confidence in. So we'll see, because right now, pretty clearly, in the month of August and September, it's going to be the Lions show, and everybody's going to pay attention to a team that is going to be on the hunt for a Super Bowl. And if the Pistons start off again where they have a long losing streak and aren't at least a 500 team, you're going to lose an audience pretty quickly, because everybody's going to be on the bandwagon of the team we're going to talk about next, which is the Detroit Lions. And because, again, we roll along with hype season with this Detroit Lions team, and you're starting to see rankings, debating different units and head coaches and general managers. It's kind of that time in the offseason where people go, hey, let's take a look at where the Lions slot at different spots. But just on the basic surface, what would be a successful season? Because, the media did ask Dan Campbell about the Super Bowl, and they said, hey, first question out of the gate, hey, is this Super Bowl or bust? And he gave a great answer. He's like, I don't believe in bust. I don't even know what that is. I believe in Super Bowl. And for me, I just think that getting to the Super Bowl probably would be the floor in regards to a successful season, because you've been to the NFC Championship game. You can't get back there again and lose. That would just kind of be a situation in which you made all these moves and didn't make progress. So progress means, I know everybody's thinking Super Bowl or bust, but if you get there, get that experience, you have so many good players under the age of 25 that we can kind of respectfully say, you know what, this team can get back there. So to me, get to the Super Bowl and see what happens. But I think this football team has a stronger than average chance of being a team that could represent the NFC.
Yeah, I'm the same mindset. It is get to the Super Bowl. This team's already shown what they've been able to do. Yeah, I feel like you've got a really good core. I feel like you've got some really good pieces. Last year, this team showed you that it can go out and it can kind of exercise a lot of the demons and kind of get some of those monkeys off of its back by winning playoff games and winning big games. And then you were able to get to arguably the biggest game of the season, and you were 30 minutes away from playing in what is the biggest game of the year at the Super Bowl. So I think this team is showing you a lot. But I think in order to take that next step, it is the Super Bowl. I'm not saying that you have to win the Super Bowl, but I'm saying that you have to get to the Super Bowl and you have to look like you belong. You have to look like you're competitive. I don't want one of those games where we're headed into the fourth quarter and it's 31 to 7, and we end up with a final score of 34-17. Like, that's not going to work for me. This has to be a close game. You have to look like you deserve to be there. So for me, that is what the definition of successful as far as a season would be. And look, it's a lot of just kind of building on a lot of the good that you did last year. If you can find a way to kind of capitalize and build upon all the good things you did a season ago, this team's going to be right there. I think they've done a really nice job adding a lot of pieces in the draft, adding some pieces during free agency, going out and kind of sticking with that culture, sticking with that mindset of these are the guys that we're looking for, this is what we're targeting, and grabbing those guys and bringing them in. So I think it sets up for a incredibly interesting year. And I think with both of us being of the like mindset for what is a successful season, there are going to be players who are going to be vitally important to helping this team obtain that successful season. So I kind of want to go through and I want to get your top 5 players that are going to define a successful season for the Detroit Lions. And the way I kind of want to do this is I want to go in reverse order. I want to go starting with your 5th one. You'll give your 5th one. I'll give my 5th one. You'll give your 4th one. I'll give my 4th one. We'll kind of work our way through. We can't have any repeats, though. So, like, there's enough guys on this team. This is what I'm talking about with the way this team has been built and constructed. There's a lot of good guys, a lot of good pieces on this team where we've got a massive pool to pull from for guys who are going to be vitally important to the success of this team next season. So, again, I want to get your top 5 important players that are going to help lead to this definition of success for a season that we've just laid out. Who's your 5th most important player on this roster right now?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because I think the biggest area for the Detroit Lions that everybody's going to need to see improvement from is the defense. So clearly a lot more trust has been levied on that offense. They didn't make a ton of moves. Maybe they still will. But to me, I think that first and foremost, you're going to need a veteran defensive back that's going to shine. So to me, number 5 is Carlton Davis. I think that when you see a player that really, to me, shined at OTAs, he was on Jamison Williams really tight. You saw his technique. You saw a competitor, and he's coming out there saying, look, I'm going to lock shit down. So to me, I think that he's very important in regards to the success of the Lions because it's the symbol of, hey, we revamped this unit, and this is the guy we traded for. So we saw what he was able to do with Tampa Bay in playoff wins. And by being able to succeed and being trusted and traded for, this guy's got to produce. So number 5 for me is Carlton Davis.
Very interesting because Carlton Davis was a guy who was when I was kind of going through my list, he was my 3rd most important player. So interesting you have him at 5. For me, my 5th most important player on this roster is Frank Ragnow. You've seen what Frank Ragnow meant to that offensive line. You know how important he is. You know how vital he is. And the strength of this team is that offensive line. And it all starts with him. Him and Jared Goff have a great relationship. And when Frank Ragnow's playing at the top of his game and he's healthy and he's able to go out there and basically put that captain's hat on and lead those 5 other guys or those 4 other guys, that offensive line, that offensive front is incredibly dominant, and it spells good things for the Detroit Lions and that offense. So for me, it's Frank Ragnow. Who's your 4th most important guy?
Yep. Now I'm going to shift to the offense. I think that, yes, the offensive line is very, very key. And I look at it and I say, look, it's very important that this offensive line stay healthy. So look, there's clearly importance with the additions of Kevin Zeitler and individuals like Frank Ragnow. But to me, 4th most important is going to be, I think, Penei Sewell. I look at it and I say, hey, this is an individual, top of his position, top of his game, new contract extension. This guy is massively important to the success of the offensive line. Arguably one of the best right tackles in the game. Maybe he's going to project to left tackle in the future if Manu ends up being successful and has the opportunity to play both sides. We'll see. But right now, right tackle, look, it's been clear. We have it all Lions. Jared Goff is the single best quarterback in the National Football League when he's not pressured. Number 1, nobody's better. But he's only 21st when, I think 21st or 24th. I'm going to look it up here. I think that his numbers dip dramatically in regards to how he looks in the face of pressure. His QBR rating dips so much. It's so vastly different. He's 24th. Not even 21st. He's 24th in QBR in the face of pressure. And that's kind of how most quarterbacks are, but the difference is vast. So for Penei Sewell, if he can continue, only gave up a handful of pressures and 1 total sack in the entire year. He builds on that. And remember, he's only 23. So this is going to be sick in regards to the future that this individual is going to have along the offensive line. He's important, so he's my number 4.
You know, it's interesting. we've kind of flip-flopped. You've gone defense first, and then I've gone offensive line, then you've gone offensive line, and now I'm going back to defense. For me, it's James Houston. James Houston was a non-factor last year. This is a guy who flashed late in the season a year ago, and you're like, okay, cool. We counted on him to give us something last year, and you got a whole lot of nothing. You're hoping he could kind of build upon the previous season. If James Houston can come out and give you anything remotely close to what he gave you, 2 seasons ago, that defensive line, that defensive front is going to cause havoc, and it's going to be obnoxious for quarterbacks to have to deal with. Also, it helps spell a guy like Aiden Hutchinson, helps give him a little bit of a break, take some of the pressure off of him. And if anything, James Houston going out there and drawing the attention of other guys on that offensive line could free up Aiden Hutchinson to turn those quarterback pressures that he led the league with, into some more sacks and really help catapult this defensive front. So for me, it's James Houston who has to show up and show out a little bit more this upcoming season and give us something. Who's your third most important player?
Yep. It's really interesting when you look at this defense and how the importance of the defensive line is. Mm-hmm. When I see that this is a unit that needed some more swagger, needed some more guys that were able to pressure the quarterback and be guys that are going to make a difference in the secondary. But I think a free agent that was signed, that was brought in to stay healthy and represent some nastiness and some aggression on the defensive line is DJ Reader. I think that when you bring in somebody new that is going to anchor that defensive line, the importance that he's going to bring maybe is not even so much in terms of his statistical performance. It's what he can do for Aleem McNeil. If you can get extra attention away from Aleem McNeil, then he can shine, and then you can just work the unit so well. And then with Terrell Williams coming on board, that's just going to help everything. And I just think that when you have a veteran of DJ Reader's caliber, if he can stay healthy, then he's going to be very vital to the success of that defensive line and in their ability to maintain their success against the run and then free up Aleem McNeil to do some things. So DJ Reader, I think, is going to be a very much a surprise addition if he can stay healthy.
I like it. I like where your head's at. I like DJ Reader being in that spot. I was kind of flip-flopping at 3 for myself, and DJ Reader was one of those guys I was kind of bouncing back and forth between. So I'm glad that you picked him and you put him there on this list. I'm gonna go with Taylor Decker. This is a guy who I was trying to figure out if he needed to be 4th or if he needed to be 3rd. I feel like he needs to be on this list. He's another guy along that offensive front. When he's healthy, he completely transforms that offensive line and helps make that unit so much better. Again, last year dealt with some injuries. He's been beat up, kind of plagued with some of these injuries the last 2 seasons. If he can come back and he can be healthy, he can kind of continue to build on a incredible career that he's had here in Detroit. Again, I feel like he is vitally important. I know Penei Sewell is basically going to be the guy who's moving over to that left side and is going to end up taking his job, and it might be as soon as next season. But for this season right here, you need Taylor Decker to go out and show how important he is to this team. And by him playing well, it helps, again, transform that offensive line. You brought up the stat with Jared Goff, allows him time. He is surgical when he has time in the pocket to pass the ball. So shoring up the middle and shoring up the guys on the outside really buy him that time and allow this offense to function at its highest potential. So I'm going Taylor Decker. Who's your second most important player on this roster?
Look at you. You like the big, beefy lineman.
I know, man.
You're going to be like, oh, look at Adam. He loves us. He's giving us attention. Those are the guys that are the smartest guys in the room. Not typically known for giving big quotes, but Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell, definitely interesting guys to talk to. Frank Ragnow as well. Graham Glasgow is the star of that room in that he's a gamer. He loves interacting, does podcasts, so it's all fun. But now we move away from the offensive line and we hit to the superstars, the divas. And to me, this is a player that has to take a step forward in 2024. He's got to be the man. He's got to be somebody that takes control of this offense and you know isn't known for just posting weird shit online when he's happy, when he's sad, and causing a stir online. Number 2 on my list is Jamison Williams. He's got to shine. He's got to be the big dog. He's got to be the alpha. He's got to shine. If he doesn't shine, this offense, when you start looking at the receivers in this division, holy cow, cuz, with the Packers and the Vikings with Addison and Jefferson. You see the Bears and their receivers. This, the NFC North, when we say it's stacked on both sides of the ball with talent. And it is going to be a dogfight to win it. Everyone thinks, the Lions are just going to show up and win it. There are offensive talent all over the place in the NFC North when you start looking at the rosters and you're like, wow, the matchups. So Amon-Ra St. Brown needs his Batman, and that guy's got to be somebody that you think could even be an alpha. It could be the number one and the stud. And that's got to be Jameson Williams. He had a chance for a highlight reel catch at OTAs. Look, it was going to be tough, but it was a dime dropped in by Jared Goff. He had it. He was stretching, running, got it over the shoulder, got the ball in his hands, and it just, and he's running right at the media, so he stayed down and was like, dang it. And you could tell his frustration because he wanted to make the play. But he still, Dan Campbell said it, and you could see it. More confident running routes, understands, look, okay, he's more familiar with everything, so he's more efficient in his movement. He's not having to, talk to Jared Goff about where he needs to be. He's at where he needs to be. Now he's just got to execute. So J-Mo is the guy that's got to step it up to the highest degree, because if it's just Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta, I think defenses can lock in and do some things. But if you add Jameson Williams in the mix, then it's just lethal, and Jared Goff has another weapon that can put up some points. And I think that J-Mo's got to be more than just a deep ball guy. He's got to get in there intermediate, yards after the catch, be sneaky, open things up for a lot of people. So I'm hoping. I think that it's trending in the right direction based on his, work on his body and his increased physique and muscular tone that's been developed. And he's still young, but he's got to step it up because it's NFL, not for long. And he's already starting to creep in some lists of some prominent sites as being a guy where the Lions might not pick up his fifth-year option. And you don't want to be on that list. He wants to be on the pay-me list. When I asked him, I said, hey, they took care of Goff and St. Brown. What do you think? He's like, me next. And in order for you to get that, you got to put some statistical numbers on the board, pal.
Absolutely. And look, he was my number 2 guy too. So a perfect spot for him. Could you imagine if he can figure it out, right? And he can take off and he can become a more integral part of this offense, how much more lethal they'll become, how much more dynamic they'll be, how many more points they can score. He can be a game changer for this offense. So look, I think it's a fantastic spot for him to fall. Number 2, he's right there at the very, very top. He's a guy who has to go out there and has to perform. And look, if he can figure it out, next thing you know, this offense is crazy. It is in the realm of those Kansas City Chiefs offenses when they had Tyreek Hill. It's in the realm of those offenses like what Miami is doing. It is one of those offenses that can just run up the score on you and just lap you and force you into throwing the football all the time, which is where I think this defense wants you to be. That's why they went out and they completely revamped the secondary, and why they've added different linebackers, guys who can drop into coverage and guys who can take things away underneath, because they want you to force you to throw the ball and they want to force those turnovers. And a guy who's going to help do that, a guy who I think has to take that next level to his game. And look, to be honest with you, just give Alex Anzalone a bit of a run for his money. It's Jack Campbell. If Jack Campbell is the guy who they drafted him to be, Alex Anzalone should be rotated in to that linebacking core. Jack Campbell should be your new Mike linebacker and should be essentially your Ray Lewis for this defense. So for me, it's Jack Campbell who has to take that big step forward and is important to this roster because, look, Alex Anzalone the last 2 years, I believe he's led this team in tackles, and it's been by a ton. If Jack Campbell is able to supplant him in that role, that tells you that he's doing everything right, and he's outperforming a veteran. And if Alex Anzalone is a guy who can get rotated in, all of a sudden that linebacking core just gets leveled up, and it becomes a stomping ground for the run game. It becomes one of those things that can put a halt to any of those short or intermediate flat passes that come from the quarterbacks. It becomes a bit of a game changer. And if you can get him to, or you can get the linebacking core in on the quarterback and collapse that pocket, it'll cause more sacks. And again, just changing the game, flipping the field position, and helping get this offense the ball back. All right, who's your number one most important guy?
Yep, I win, baby. You let me I appreciate you letting me go first because it allows me to pick the guy that's most important. Arguably, Vito did a story, Burning Questions, and maybe probably is going to be your number one when you hear what I posted. But clearly, Vito thought that Aiden Hutchinson was important. Yes, very important, very key for the defense. Clearly needs a lot of sacks. But the most important guy on the Detroit Lions is Jared Goff. He's got to be a guy that's going to earn that $53 million contract. He's got to take another step forward in his career. And actually, when this football team needs him in those moments to lead that offense. Look, the offense had one major issue last year that they just couldn't figure out. And it's kind of weird because most teams don't take a quarter off offensively. And the Detroit Lions, for some reason, just coming out of the halftime break in the third quarter, their first couple drives and possessions just were a little bit wonky. And maybe it's just, defenses were just one step ahead in terms of adjustments, or they just out of the halftime break just couldn't get into that rhythm in a rhythm-based offense. So whatever they got to do, Jared Goff has to be the conductor of one offense that's expected to be the most explosive, lethal, and dynamic. Look what literally, Jared Goff should be texting Brad Holmes every single day, thank you. When you see he's got Jahmyr Gibbs, stud, tight end, Sam Laporta, stud. Many people are talking about him being maybe even the best tight end in the game right now, stud. Wide receiver Jamison Williams, expected to be a stud. Amon-Ra St. Brown, numbers have showed that he's more than just a slot receiver. Fourth best numbers in the entire league on the outside. Can do it all. Just an alpha, just absolute stud. So you recognize that and you got an offensive line that's chock full of talent everywhere. So for Jared Goff, you're walking in with the king's crown, and you got to actually hold up your end of the bargain. And whatever it may be, just one less turnover or one extra, read that you make to get the ball out or do what you got to do. Jared Goff is key. And I just think that, look, it's romanticizing if you think Hendon Hooker can just come in with a year away and not seeing it. This is really Hooker's real first look at NFL football live and where you're in charge of knowing exactly where everything is. And it's complicated. Hooker looked rough in OTAs. It was clear. He had a rough day. Maybe he had something going on. People said they saw things with his hand. I'm not out there looking at that level of detail where every throw he makes, is he shaking his hand? I was just looking, okay, where's the football going? Had great zip, but it wasn't going where it needed to, and a couple footballs were intercepted, so it made for an evaluation. So we'll see as he progresses because he's young. But if Jared Goff goes down, I think that the season's over for the Detroit Lions. So number one most important to me is Jared Goff.
Yes, absolutely. Guy deserves to be number one, basically on everybody's list, especially after signing that massive contract. Incredibly important to that offense. And look, with my pick, and this will be the final one for us. I feel like there's a 1,001 ways I could go here. You can go St. Brown. You know what he means to the offense. Sam Laporta showed up last year and helped transform this offense. You've got guys like Aleem McNeil, who I'm expecting big things from this year. You've got a couple of rookie cornerbacks who can make a huge impact on this defense. So there's a lot of guys who are still available to go in that number one spot for me. But I think I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to go with Dan Campbell. And the reason I go with Dan Campbell is Dan Campbell has done a lot of great things. Dan Campbell has this awesome intensity and has this awesome fire, and all the players love it. You're now going into year 4 of this. Can he keep that motor revved up? Can he keep things going in this direction? Can he keep pressing all the right buttons? Because if you looked at what he did when he first came in to where we're at now, this guy has basically scored a 98% on pressing all the right buttons, getting this team where it needs to go, and helping to keep these guys motivated. The hope is that doesn't wear thin. The hope is that doesn't wear off and doesn't become one of those things that just kind of becomes background noise to these guys. I don't think it will, but I also continue to enjoy watching Dan Campbell learn and grow as a head coach. I think there's been a lot of growth from Dan Campbell from year 1 to where we're going to be at now headed into year 4. If Dan Campbell can continue that path, that linear path of growing and becoming the head coach that he's becoming, maybe learning to take a field goal here or there instead of going for it all the time on 4th down, calling and dialing up the right plays when he does go for it on the 4th downs. If Dan Campbell can continue to kind of fine-tune and tweak a lot of the things that he has done and gotten better at, that's what I'm looking for as we move into this next phase of Lions football. And for me, that is why Dan Campbell, the guy who presses all the buttons, gives all the calls and hands out the responsibility to different people and kind of checks in with all the guys to make sure everybody's on the same page. Dan Campbell, to me, is the most important player on this Lions roster right now.
Yeah, and look, clearly, I think if you didn't go Dan Campbell, you'd have to put it as Aiden Hutchinson. The guy's got to take a step forward.
For sure.
Everybody assumes that the individuals that are going to get sacks, number one, is going to be Aiden Hutchinson. So, look, Dan Campbell, it's going to be very interesting. So I guess the best way to put it is, what one thing does he definitely have to get better at? It's something that you've seen maybe that he can do to step up or change or modify that can get him from, look, really good head coach to elite by winning a championship.
So to me, what sticks out the most, right? Looking at last season, this is just kind of boiling everything down. Looking at what took place last season, you go back to that Dallas game, and you go back to that infamous call when they went for two. I felt like Dan Campbell got a little bit wrapped up in the emotion. I felt like, and look, it's great because it's something that I love. I'm an emotional guy. I love when the emotion runs high. I love that the guy wears his heart on his sleeve. I think the players love that too. And I think everybody loves the big balls that Dan Campbell has and the willingness to continue to go for it. In that game, he went for it for three times, I think. At a certain point, you just got to be a little bit smarter, kick the extra point, go to overtime, win the game in overtime. I need him to kind of learn from those moments, maybe kind of check some of that emotion and kind of be able to put more of the thinking hat on instead of that emotional hat. And that's what I'm really looking for, is just kind of being able to be that guy, that rah-rah guy that gets all the players amped up and gets all the players to buy in. But at a certain point, when it's critical, when you've got to put your poker face on, right? And you got to figure out if you're pushing all your chips in, I need you to be thinking about it and not be emotional about it. And I think sometimes his emotion just kind of bleeds over into his thinking brain, and I need the emotional brain to kind of be checked at the door and let that thinking brain take charge and take control.
Understood. Now, I don't know if you heard on Tuesday, but the NFLPA kind of wants to change things. They want to give the players something that is really interesting and something that kind of happened during the COVID era. So with the NFL, for the players, it's a little bit wonky in that you get from January until basically middle of April off. And then there's a series of 3 parts where it's the 9-week off-season program where it consists of meetings first, then the workouts, then on-field work. And for the NFL, it's a little bit wonky, but it produced after the only mandatory part of the offseason, which is mandatory minicamp in the first week of June. Once it's completed, then the league basically shut down for 6 weeks from basically June 10th until July 25th or so. 6 weeks where basically it's just a review of everything. Everybody gets healthy. Everybody can go about their business, and you get kind of a chance to reset everything. To me, as a person covering the league in that fashion, it's perfect. You get time with your family. You get the month of June, July, all that situation in a manner in which you can spend time with your family, reset a little bit. It's not a grind. There's no need to battle everybody for the news to get it out there. It's just a great opportunity to kind of get away from everything and just slow things down. And it's a great time for us to reflect and take time when we do peek into football to look at, okay, here's some stat predictions. Here's some thoughts about games that are going to be interesting. Here's a look at matchups. Well, what's going to happen potentially? And I don't know. I don't know if it's going to get ratified, but the NFLPA, what they want to do is they want to say, no. Enough of this herky-jerky on and off, players traveling in, out. And it's interesting, too, because the Lions, I think, just said to the veterans, look, you don't need to be here, and just gave it to them off. Because when you see Anzalone, Ragnow, and Decker, they're not there, and basically they're healthy, you're like, okay, then the veterans are like, look, Dan, they probably said, Dan, look, can we just work out on our own? Do we really got to come to OTAs where we're just running around? And Dan's probably like, sure, guys, I trust you. No problem. It felt like a veteran workout pass. So it was real interesting to see. And I just think that to me, a lot of people have said, to me, I think it's great for the players. It would allow them a chance to have from once you get eliminated from January, you don't got to do nothing until mid-June. In terms of you can be in virtual meetings and stuff like that. But for the veterans, they can report in late, in early July and have stuff go on. So here's the benefit of it is the players have found that the researchers found that by players just kind of ramping up slowly in the tail end of June and July going into training camp, then there's a chance to reduce injuries. And so that's something that's great. But here's the thing that all the reporters clearly are saying, and you can see on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. I broadcast typically a lot what Albert Breer says because of his affiliation to SI. And he said, look, if you're a staffer on an NFL team, they're basically screwing your summer vacation. They're making you report back to work when your family's off. So in terms of just the normalcy of life, it would fuck up a lot of things for coaches, for players, when, hey, you guys got 6 weeks and your families are off. Your families are gone, and you're going to be basically when everybody's out and about and family vacation and stuff. So to me, I personally when I saw it on Tuesday, I hated it. It was like, oh, no, it's going to cause some problems because right now, for the most part, whenever there's on-field activities, I'm there. But I'm going to say this. If there's an on-field activity July 6th and 7th, there's a chance I just skip it. I just say, forget it. You know what I mean? There's not a lot there other than just, hey, who's completing passes and who looks good. I might send somebody else or figure out how to not do it because family time's important. Birthdays are there. The 5th and the 12th, a lot of things going on in July. That 6 week is perfect. And also time to just decompress too because I'm going hard working 2 jobs. In those 6 weeks, you can slow down things. And so I'm definitely going to take advantage of this 6 weeks and figure out a way to not do nothing for at least a couple weeks. But to me, I'm conflicted. It sucks because being selfish, I don't want to go out there in the middle of. I don't want to go out there, on June 25th to look at an OTA practice when it's meaningless. And it's not meaningless, but it's not as important as when the pads are on. And so people are interested. They want to know about the players. I just think that the current system seems to be fair in regards to a little bit of install, a little bit of work. And it's not like these players are going down with massive injuries at these workouts. They're going 3/4 speed. They're just getting in and out of routes, 7-on-7s. You're just kind of doing a lot of fundamental work. And I think it's good to kind of get introduced to that. But maybe it's something in which you break it up, in which the OTAs are just for guys with 3 years or less experience, just to get them more work and stuff like that. And nobody has to report if you're a veteran with 3 or more years experience until July, and maybe make it the best of both worlds. But I don't know. What do you think of it? Do you think this revised schedule could help the league? Because to me, I think that it kind of screws up a lot of things in regards to those of us with families.
Yeah, and look, I totally get that, right? But I've never ever understood the NFL and their off-season schedule. To me, it's always kind of felt herky-jerky because you report, you do OTAs, and then you're off for weeks, and then we come back. Late July, beginning of August, and we kind of get things going again, or middle of July, and we get things going again. So to me, the schedule never made any sense. This makes complete sense to me. It gives players and it gives coaches a longer window of time off, and then it just kind of moves everything to I think it's like the end of June. You head into camp for basically just conditioning. It's just to kind of get your body back into shape, kind of get your wind and get your rhythm back. And then you really kind of kick off training camp with July, and you kind of get going there. So to me, it makes complete and utter sense. I get it from a family perspective, right? I get it from the guys who work in the front office. I get it from their perspective where, you have your OTAs. It's this weird little time in May where guys come in and they do their thing, and then you basically have all of June. So when your kids get out of school, it allows you to spend time with them and allows you to do stuff with them, and then you're heading back to training camp in July. Makes sense. I understand it. But when you look at the way other leagues kind of handle their off seasons, there isn't this like week-long gap, 2-week-long gap where they show up to do stuff as a team and then they're off. And then they come back as a full team and do stuff. So it never really made sense to me the way the NFL kind of structured their offseason. This new revised look makes complete and utter sense to me, and I think I'm more for it. Look, I know it's going to mess up your schedule, and I'm sorry it's going to mess up your schedule. I know it might mess up some of the some of the other people in front offices. I know it might mess up some of their schedules. I don't really care about them. So just kind of deal with it. I mean, welcome to the real world.
Yeah.
You know, everybody else works 365, and the only time you really get off is when you can take a vacation. So your vacation happens to come at the end of the season, and doesn't pick up until July. So
no, I do.
Till June.
It's actually crazy because the way it does work now, from January. Look, we've now gotten 5 months in, and I feel good. So it's just real intense 7 months, and really intense from August until January. So I look at it like in terms of why it's done that way. Well, because you have a draft, and you want to acclimate rookies into life in the NFL. So that takes care of rookie minicamp. Now you have these meetings, and the first phase is just workouts. So you just get in the gym, get eyes on people, get healthy, and so it provides more access for teams to talk to their players and say, hey, oh, you know what, you had this thing, it's still lingering, let's clean it up. It provides for advancements and understanding of the player and their health and where things are at. And because I encourage you, a lot of the athletes, which is great, that are now analysts, like Dan Orlovsky, like David Carr, they've pulled out offensive playbooks and schemes from times and camps that they've been in. And when they go through it, it is so elaborate and so detailed that concepts build on concepts. And they went through it a little bit and started to go. I was like, wow. And it's so intricate and so it's just a situation in which it's not learned that quickly. Even in 6 weeks, it's not learned. You get it, and rookies, when they say, I didn't understand what it meant when they said, you know, it's like drinking out of a fire hose. I understood, okay, they're getting a lot thrown at them. But when I saw the book, and then that's not even installs. That's just, here's our concepts. And then they take those basic knowledge of schemes, formations, downs, applications, this and that. Once they get that, then the coach can go and modify it based on those fundamental beliefs and tenets and shift game plans week to week, installs that go on during the week. I started to get understanding when Josh Reynolds would say, my Wednesday is just a nightmare, because he would just be given so many things about the XYZ spot, game plans, plays that were going to be for him, plays where he was responsible for blocking, and plays in which he was responsible for different things. And it takes time. So in order to get that information, a lot of these guys get out there. Yeah, the on-field work is interesting, but a lot of it's film study that we don't get to see, where they have meetings and they go back and say, okay, this is what we tried to apply. And a lot of it's just, like I said, the first time they were out in the field, the Lions had a hard time lining up in terms of the rookie minicamp. And that's what it is. It's about getting the cadence down. It's about getting the fundamentals down. Football is so intricate with timing and getting the information in and then understanding what you need to see, that a lot of it is, hey, let's just get out there in the classroom for an hour and a half. You don't practice for all that much. It's an hour and a half, and there's so many individual periods where there's 20 minutes where there's just a doofus like me just standing there taking pictures of guys stretching. So there's not a lot of practice time. They've stripped it down, and the way in which it's done now, it allows an introduction of the concepts. You get it, then you get a little break to kind of get ready, get your body right mentally for the grind. So that little break after all the work, I think, is also great. I think the schedule the way it is now is perfect. And also, too, in terms of content, now you're really stretching in terms of, look, we got to fill pages. Can't lie. We got to fill podcasts and content. And when you have that information, that allows us to gather a lot more in terms of, okay, now we've seen Hendon Hooker. What does this mean in regards to Jared Goff? What does it mean in terms of team needs? How does this kind of play into? So the schedule was kind of in a good way in terms of giving information, little teasers here and there up until the 6 week break. And so it is herky-jerky. It is a little bit tough, but I do think that, remember now, the way in which we want to classify it, it's a proposal. So the NFL can look at it and say, oh, you want to change it up and more time away from the game, and then maybe we're going to need you to kind of let us have that 18th game and drop one of those preseason games. So we'll see if it actually goes through. I think coaches may be the ones that disapprove of it, because, you know, you are putting a lot more pressure on the coaches to get these guys to understand all the concepts that they got. And the game, if you guys remember too, in September, the first couple games are real sloppy. Tackling is shitty. It's real bad. And that's because, you know, people are even when you get to training camp, there's a week where you're just running around and there's no pads. So it's tough to get everything installed. And a lot of times people are working things out a month into the season. So I'm all against it. I can understand where someone like yourself would see it as, okay, you know what? It's great for the players as well in regards to a nice long break it'll extend their careers, I think, at least another year. If you just get off, in the middle of January if you're a playoff team, and then you don't have to do nothing all of February, March, April, May, and June. You get in there, and you know that's a good 5 months off if you train properly. It's smart. So I just think that we need a little bit of a mix where we need some football action, we need some OTAs, but maybe the vets, once their bodies, kind of like AEW, they don't wrestle 9 days, they don't wrestle 6 days a week. They wrestle twice, and they can extend out further. So we need more of an AEW style where we still get some football, but not to the degree of which you take, the extra time in May and June, because I can't take a vacation in May. I'd love to, but the kids are in school. But in the future, when the kids are 18 and gone, that'll be great. But now it'll be tough. So we'll see if the situation evolves and changes. All right, cuz it's looking like right now, it's going to be, looks like Boston is in, they swept, and it appears to me that the Mavs are close. Is it the Mavs that are leading? It seems like these conference finals are not as close as people think.
Yeah,
Mavs are up 3. Mavs are up to 3-0. So that at time of recording, they're probably going to sweep or end up, advancing to the conference finals. What do you think? Does it feel like Boston's title to win this year?
For me, it does.
Yeah.
Boston has been a pretty dominant team, basically all the way through these playoffs, and they seem to have the right mix. So yeah, I think it's going to be Boston. I've been paying a little bit more attention to the NHL playoffs.
Me too.
Finding the Panthers Rangers series to be awesome, just falling in love with Kachuk all over again.
Rangers Dallas, bro, is going to be legit. It'll go 7 games. It'll be legit.
You think that's going to be the final? It's going to be Dallas and the Rangers.
Dallas has got size and speed, and they got it, bro. They're stacked everywhere. I can't find a hole. I'm looking. I'm like, oh my god, power play is great, defense is great, speed, size, goaltending. I'm like, if they play their game, they're the best team. They're a great team, and I think the Rangers and the Stars are the 2 best teams in the NHL right now.
Interesting. I'm a huge fan of the Panthers. I want the Panthers to win. I was really hoping for a Panthers Edmonton final. I don't think Edmonton has enough to get there, so it'll probably be Dallas. I hate New York fans, so I do not want the Rangers to win. I do want the Panthers to win, and if the Panthers can somehow get there, I want them to win the Stanley Cup. So it's going to be interesting. This is a fantastic time. The next couple weeks are great as the NBA finals are upon us, and the NHL finals are getting there. So this is really, really exciting time.
No doubt. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Real fun if you're into sports. Stephen A. Smith did a real interesting documentary about the future of sports media. It's called Up for Debate. It was really great, talking about podcasts and different voices that have come in. Real good stuff. I enjoyed it. 3-part series. Thought it was real interesting, and it was real solid in looking at how the old media was and now how the new media has a lot more voices and how it's going to take shape in the future. Up for Debate on ESPN Plus. I loved it. Watched it straight through. Found it to be very entertaining. Make sure you follow another entertaining site, our Twitter page, at Detroit Podcast. All the fun, hijinks, hilarity, jokes. Make sure you check in if you've agreed or disagreed with anything that you heard over the last 60 minutes. Hit us up. Thank you guys for making us part of the Detroit sports community. Can't wait to fire it up next week as we review another week of Lions OTAs that's taking place this week. We'll get another opportunity to talk about the Detroit Lions next week on the next episode of Doc and Jock.
You fucking podcasters. I said don't let them in here.